So a big part of this channel is helping people make buying decisions about their next watch purchase. And typically some of the best ways to navigate this is looking at maybe some watches that people might consider for a specific style, price range that will commonly be under the kind of similar consideration. And today we're going to be looking at two everyday style, say field, aviation style watches, depending on the one we're talking about here, with the Longines Spirit and the Tudor Ranger. Some of the best watches, I think, to kind of do it all between $2,000 to $3,000. And what we're gonna be doing here is putting them head to head across a wide range of categories to see what is the better watch for different people out there. So how this works is we have a wide range of categories. Each category is gonna have a corresponding point associated with it. And if you win the category, you get the point. If you tie, they both get a point. And at the end, we'll tally them up and then give ultimate reasons why maybe one wins out over the other, depending on your circumstance. And of course, look at the tally in total. So these watches are mostly in that $2,000 to $3,000 range. There is a price separation between them, but if you want something, say under $1,000, I would say one of the best options as a stepping stone into these watches, or just a straight up alternative if you're just trying to get a great option under $1,000, is the Hamilton Khaki Field Murph, specifically the one at 38 millimeters. I think this is really where everything came together for the Murph. This is available on teddybaldassarre.com. I'd recommend checking it out during the holiday season. These were some of the most popular best-selling watches, and I think for good reason. And of any of the 38 millimeter khaki field options is going to be the most wearable out there, with a lug to lug that's going to be about 2 millimeters shorter than that of conventional mechanical options. 80-hour power reserve movement, more refined handset, I would say is probably the most versatile khaki that you're going to find under $1,000 as well. Has a little bit more of a dressy upside, but these are some of my favorite releases from 2023. Definitely recommend checking them out on teddybaldassarre.com. Link will be in the description down below, as well as some more details with a full video if you do want to get lost a little bit more. So quickly looking at our different categories here, we have optionality, then we're moving into wearability, versatility, strap and bracelet, case and dial finish, lume, water resistance, movement, brand equity, heritage, and then price. Also, this is not intended to be a full in-depth review of each one of these watches, more about how they compare with one another. So if you do want to see even more details on these watches, I'll link to both individual reviews of these pieces down below. To kick us off here, we'll first begin with optionality. And this is one of the easier wins. This one is going to go to Longines. With the Tudor Ranger only coming available at 39 millimeters with its conventional option, you do have some different strap options, but one option from a dial standpoint versus a 37 millimeter option with some range of different dial colors, 40 millimeters and 42. The Spirit just simply offers much more here with a variety of dial colors, different case sizes. Easy win is going to go to the Spirit if you want more optionality in front of you. Now let's move into wearability. So this was a tougher one than anticipated. If you're going to pick one size that has the most mass appeal, I would say the 39 millimeter Ranger is going to be that. It is the right choice for a size, I would say, if you're trying to get the widest spread across the marketplace. However, with the lack of different sizes, I think this likely is going to have to give the win also to Longines here. Given that you have those three different sizes, it's going to have more flexibility on the wearability department, but I would say the Ranger is going to be more of the sweet spot if you're trying to be mass appealing. The 37 millimeter wears more like a 38, the 40 millimeter wears more like a 41 to 41 and a half, and the 42 wears like a 43 and a half on wrist. So all of the Spirits are going to wear larger. The 37 does wear just a tad bit better on the wrist in comparison, because they did actually make some adjustments to the lug to lug length and how that end link is going to now curve down a little bit more towards the wrist. So it's not gonna be as imposing from that lug to lug metric. But in general, I think from a wearability standpoint, just because you have more options, Longines also gets the win here. Now for versatility, how viable are these watches in a wide range of scenarios? And I think this is ultimately a tie. Both are incredibly versatile, and I think it's an important trait to have for this everyday style watch that both of them occupy. The Spirits are going to have a better ability to be dressed up with some of their polished and reflective elements. And then you have the Tudor Ranger that has a better ability to be dressed down. It's a bit more robust in its nature, screw down crown, has more of a matte type of effect with its hue, just extends into the other direction. But I think both of them equally extend a little bit more than the other in opposite opposing directions. So I'm gonna say this one's a tie. Both of them will get a point. Now for the strap and bracelet, Although Longines has done a nice job with their bracelets, very refined, the clasp is stamped but still well done, micro adjustment within the clasp, but the bracelet for Tudor is just simply class leading. With the T-fit clasp, also with this specific option at $3,000 to get into the T-fit might be my favorite configuration of the T-fit. Looking at the Pelagos option with that diver extension, the clasp is so long, this one just wears like a dream on the wrist in comparison to the actual size of the watch. It's probably one of the best bracelets that you're gonna find even for under $5,000, so tough task for the Longines. Tudor wins this one easily. Next we have case and dial finish, and I would say most people would typically give the nod when comparing these two brands to Tudor. But in this case, Longines, I think, delivers much more. I think that's partially because of the Ranger in its general approach. It's more utilitarian, more brushed across its surfaces, less hits of polishing, but mostly the dial is going to be a flatter approach than the norm. This was one of the points of criticism for this watch, is the dial just felt flat with just the printed marking rather than having some raised elements. When you shift over to the Longines, the case has some more points of refinement, but the dial is really where it separates. You have some raised indices, the handset looks a bit more refined in practice, has more of a sun ray effect, has more three-dimensionality. There's just more points of refinement throughout from the Longines in comparison to the Tudor. So I think for this one, you have to give the win to Longines as well. So when Tudor has won so far, they've won in a very easy fashion. The same can be said for this next category with lume. Hands down, Tudor's going to win. Typically, Tudor has some excellent lume, and even with this more faux patina shade, it's going to perform well. Not quite on the level of the Black Bay, but still more than what you can probably ask for from the conventional competition. The Spirit lume is adequate, but not exceptional or close to that of the Tudor. So simply put, the Tudor wins here. For our next category of water resistance, this is a tight one because both of them do have 100 meters of water resistance. But I think I want to give a slight win here to Tudor just because it does have a screw down crown. Now, screw down crowns do have their downsides. I think people automatically think screw down crowns are always better. The threading of those crowns is delicate, and if you are able to strip the threading on that crown, this could cause more issues than a conventional push-pull. So that is to be considered. But if we're talking about just the challenge of water resistance, Tudor has to win here because a screw down crown is going to be better for that job. Now, movements is also a tough category. Typically in the last 5 or so years, ever since we've seen the MT calibers starting to get more involved within Tudor's collection, this has allowed the brand to elevate quite a bit. But the reality is, I think this is a tie as well because Longines is delivering some phenomenal movements within their watches. And with Kinesi being a third-party arm that Tudor has ownership of, and you have Longines with utilizing Swatch-related group movements with ETA, it's kind of a similar type of interaction. I think Longines in a way could get with their proprietary movements away with some of the language of in-house, just the same way that Tudor can get away with it. They just don't necessarily utilize that language as much. So I'm gonna give this one a tie. When looking at both of these movements, let's start with the Spirit. So this one comes with an L888 caliber, specifically the A31.L11. It operates at 25,200 vibrations per hour, so 3.5 hertz, features hacking and hand winding, power reserve of 72 hours, so slightly more, but you are slowing down the beat frequency here to get it. Tudor has the MT5402, 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 hertz, features hacking and hand winding, and a power reserve of 70 hours. And why I think they're also a tie, both are going to be COSC certified, so certified chronometers, and both offer some silicon components to alleviate magnetic interference as well. Now, I was considering whether or not to include this as a category because this is not something I necessarily think about when looking to buy a watch, but I know many people do, and that is brand equity. What I'm really looking at here is how well does the watch retain its value? What is the general perception in the marketplace when it comes to retaining value? I'm not necessarily a big proponent of this, but it is something to talk about. And in this case, I think Tudor is going to get the win. The market ultimately decides this. With the Rolex affiliation, slightly higher price, there's going to be some better value retention here. Now, Longines is a huge brand. It is actually a top 5 producer in the Swiss watch industry in terms of actual market cap. You're talking about over $1 billion a year in sales. But I think the Rolex affiliation, some of the secondary market and availability of the Tudor has made the watch from a brand equity standpoint appear to be a little bit more in demand. So Tudor is going to get the nod here if that is something that you're worried about. But jumping off of that, then we have to talk about heritage. And for that, I'm looking at the history of the brand. And for this, I'm going to give the edge to Longines. Longines 1832 versus Tudor 1926, but they really didn't even start making watches until 20 years after that. It's more of the point where they would trademark the name. In addition, Tudor's history is more of recent developments. Of course, they have the Marine Nationale, but even with the Ranger, the details about its history is slightly murky in comparison to that of the heritage of Longines, one of the strongest of any brand in the entire industry. When you looked at their contributions to aviation, although the Spirit is going to not be a direct one-to-one of something in their archive, it comes from that aviation history that is one of the, say, the big 3 in aviation watches. I'd put it up there with perhaps Breitling and IWC only being in front of them as definitive leaders in that category. Tudor is certainly gaining on this idea, especially with the recent developments and creating icons now like the Black Bay, which I think has now reached iconic status in terms of a modern watch and what it should be. But just looking at the vastness of history archive, Longines has to get the edge here. And then for price, this is an easy one. Longines is also going to get the win as well. Spirit ranges from $2,150 on a strap to $2,400 on a bracelet, while the Ranger starts at $2,725 on a NATO or rubber leather strap and goes up to $3,000 on the bracelet. So these watches are relatively close in price than some of their other offerings. I think the Ranger is one of the most attainable Tudor watches that you're going to find. The most attainable watch with an MT caliber movement on the inside. So it's a little bit closer than you might typically find, but even with that being the case, Longines gets the win. So when tallying up the points here, Longines comes away with 7 total points and Tudor comes away with 6 total points. So this is a close call here in terms of trying to find the right watch for you. I would say it is a toss-up. So I guess it does depend on a few points. If you want the best value for dollar, you want something with more options, more dial colors, also want something that has some more aviation style with its roots, then I would go for the Longines Spirit. That is probably going to be the better option for you. You're going to save some money in the process. The design, of course, is going to be the #1 reason why you're going to go one way or the other, but those are probably the reasons why I would ultimately go towards the Longines. But now shifting over to Tudor, why would somebody go and look at this Tudor Ranger instead, and why is it maybe the better choice for certain individual out there? I would say ultimately, it's going to come into the fact that it allows them to get into the Tudor Rolex family. You get some manufactured style of movement here with the MT caliber, and it simply just checks off the boxes. It is a spec junkie across the board. But having that Tudor Rolex name affiliated with a watch that is right around $3,000 is rather compelling. So it's just getting into that ecosystem. I also do think it's a little bit more in alignment with somebody that does want to potentially navigate, like let's say the 1016 Explorer, and wants something of that styling to wear on the wrist. That might be the other reason why to go for this watch. But I think both of them are great. The other watch I will mention here as another alternative, you could look at something like the Black Bay 36 as another great option here. That does have its own pros and cons associated, but once those come out with MT calibers, I think that would probably be the winner as the definitive watch in this price category. But we're still yet to see that happen with kind of more off-the-shelf movements, shorter power reserves. You do have the S&G models, but that extends up in price quite a bit. So with the current status of that, I think these are probably the two to compare here, but I do want to also mention the Black Bay 36 as an alternative as well. But all right, guys, that is comparing these two watches side by side. Which one would you go for? Are you an owner of either of these pieces? And what would you say for somebody that's trying to navigate the decision of either of these watches side by side, or just looking at these watches in general? Love to see comments down below. Any ownership stories, I always just really welcome those in the comments, because anybody that's looking to buy these watches, it just helps give some peer validation to their decision-making process and getting more opinions out there from actual owners. Always very helpful. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's a great indicator that you want to see more of these comparison style videos in the future. And if you want to see another one in the future, let me know what two watches you'd like to see paired up against each other for a competition. Definitely check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.